call upon the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister of Canada, to address this joint session.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker of the House of Commons, Honourable Speaker of the Senate, dear colleagues from both houses of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure today, Mr. Speaker, to introduce His Excellency Hamid Karzai, President of Afghanistan.
His introduction. I know the President will understand and forgive me for taking a few minutes to acknowledge some others, because there are some very important people with us here today. Were it not for them, in fact, President Karzai might not be here. Afghanistan might still be ruled by tyrants and terrorists. Their courage and their commitment is the steel in Canada's national will to fight against global terrorism and to fight for peace and security in Afghanistan. They are the wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, and comrades of the brave Canadians who are rescuing and rebuilding President Karzai's long-suffering homeland. Among them are veterans of that noble mission, including some who have shed their blood on Afghan soil. I know everyone in this House will join me in saluting them for their courage and sacrifice. And now, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to introduce to this House the first democratically elected leader in the history of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai. In October 2004, he won a clear majority over 22 other candidates. He took 55% of the over 8 million votes cast. And may I say, Mr. Speaker, that I am very impressed and more than a little envious of this record of electoral success. But we should not be surprised by it. Fiar Pashtun, né Kandahar.
Proud Pashtun, born in Kandahar, Mr. Karzai speaks 6 languages and has attended universities in Kabul. And very early on, he took part in the political life of his country. He witnessed upheavals, and he has known more danger as a politician than any one of us here could even imagine.
Student in India. His beloved country was invaded and occupied by the Soviets. He became an important figure in the Afghan popular resistance movement and helped the Mujahideen drive out the communists. When the Taliban seized power in the 1990s, Hamid Karzai took a stand for his country once again. But his refusal to collaborate with the fanatical regime was a costly one. He was forced to live in exile and therefore was not at home when his father was assassinated, almost certainly by agents of the Taliban. A lesser man might have retreated from public life, but Hamid Karzai stepped forward again in 2001 to bring political and economic progress to his people after the Taliban were ousted from power by a coalition of countries acting under the mandate of the United Nations. He embarked on a campaign to persuade the international community to donate resources needed to rebuild his shattered country. And when
the leaders of the Afghan tribes came together in 2002 to choose a leader and an interim government, Hamid Karzai was there once again to serve his country. and we should not be surprised at his electoral success. It's the incarnation of the progress that has been made by his country in its long travels towards democracy.
As he tells us about the progress that is being made on security and reconstruction in Afghanistan, about the advance of freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, about the role our defense personnel, diplomats, development workers, and tax dollars are playing, and about the challenges that remain. Now, Mr. President, I would, before you take the podium from me, I'd just like to share a personal reflection. Il y a à peine une semaine à Montréal.
Barely a week ago in Montreal, an unstable individual opened fire on students in a college, and since then, Canadians have been mourning the victim and are praying for the praying for the survivors. And I thought of these students when I walked my children to school, but I also thought of the thousands of young children who in your country every day must face this type of violence and risk.
Not from an isolated madman, but from the remnants of a regime that once ruled your country. People who oppose any education, particularly any education for girls. People who are prepared to deliberately kill children to achieve their fanatical goals. And we know this is not some theory. This week, we learned, sadly, in this country of the deaths of 4 Canadian soldiers, killed by the Taliban as they stopped to assist Afghan children in an attack in which a score of young Afghan children were maimed and injured. Those Canadians, Mr. President, all the Canadians in Afghanistan, and I think all Canadians, are thankful for the peace and prosperity that our children enjoy almost as a birthright. And we want to share our blessings with the children of your country. That's why, at your request, we're in your country. Monsieur le Président, vous êtes ici.
You're here among friends, Mr. President.
Years, consistently backed not just by our government, but by most in this Parliament, most notably by my colleague and sometimes adversary, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. And all of us want to help you and your embattled people, and we so eagerly await your words. Colleagues, His Excellency, the President of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Thank you very much. I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. Honorable members of Parliament, in Afghanistan, in a very respectful place, you wear your hat. So I will wear my hat as a mark of respect. Thank you. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Speaker of the House of Commons, Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for this great honor, and thank you for welcoming me to the House of the Canadian people.
Today, with deep emotions, honorable members, It is a pleasure to be among friends in Canada today and to be visiting a great nation that is a model to the rest of us for all that is good. Yet, I know my visit comes at a time of sadness for a number of families across Canada who have lost loved ones in my country, Afghanistan. I also know that it is a time when many in Canada are pondering their country's role in Afghanistan. Therefore, in addition to the honourable members, it is to those families and the Canadian public that I wish to address myself today. If the greatness of a life is measured in deeds done for others, then Canada's sons and daughters who have made the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan stand among the greatest of their generation. Within the next day, 4 of your fallen soldiers will return home to their final resting place. They have sacrificed so that we in Afghanistan may have security. And they have sacrificed to ensure the continued safety of their fellow Canadians from terrorism. I know that there are many others who also feel the emptiness and loss of their loved ones. My heart goes to the families, the friends, and the Canadian people at this time of reflection and sorrow for those families. More than anyone else, Afghans very much understand that these sacrifices are for a great good cause, the cause of all of us as humanity, the cause of security for all, and the cause of peace and the basics of life for Afghan children, as Mr. Prime Minister, you earlier mentioned. Honourable members, the people of Afghanistan have suffered from over 2 decades of invasions and destruction. The miseries of the Afghan people began with the invasion of our country in 1979 and continued until the tragedy of September 11, brought to the world by Al-Qaeda and their associates. The freedom-loving Afghan people, backed by supporters from what was then referred to as the free world, and fought and defeated the invasion, facilitating the disintegration of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall. These were indeed significant accomplishments of our time, for which Afghans paid dearly. Over 1 million Afghans lost their life. Another 1 million were disabled. More than a quarter of our population became refugees in our neighbors and elsewhere, and our country's infrastructure was razed to the ground. Whereas Afghans had fought and won the world's war against communism, the reward that Afghanistan received was abandonment by the international community. We were left with a world of destruction to rebuild and at the mercy of a predatory neighborhood and the bellicose extremist forces that had been brought to Afghanistan. Few cared about the dismal plight of the Afghan people, and even fewer thought about the consequences of leaving a country so dangerously vulnerable to foreign extremists. It was in this environment that Al-Qaeda, with supporters in the region and beyond, set up its deadly campaign of terror against Afghans and the whole world. While the Afghan people continued to suffer, and while we continue to warn the international community about the danger of international terrorism that was brewing in Afghanistan, the world remained unmoved. Both our sufferings and our warnings were ignored, as if Afghanistan did not exist. Perhaps by the standards of today's world, we did not exist, for we had nothing to sell to the world or nothing to buy from the world, so we did not matter. The tragedy of September 11 showed in a terrible way the flaws of the argument against helping Afghanistan. For one thing, it showed that, in fact, the cost of ignoring Afghanistan was far higher than the cost of helping it. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 brought home to many in the West the pain of terror and the fear that we in Afghanistan had been feeling at the hands of foreign terrorists for so many years before September 11. And when the international community forces, including Canadians, came to Afghanistan later that year as partners under the banner of a United Nations Security Council resolution to liberate Afghanistan from extremist forces which had seized control of our nation many years before that. The arrival of the international community to our rescue after 9/11, however, was not a partnership solely of military might. Over the last 5 years, Afghanistan and the international community have developed a remarkable partnership, which I would call a cooperation of civilizations, a partnership that extends from enhancing security to developing the rural areas of Afghanistan, to providing education and health services to our needy people. Canada, in all respects, has been among the leaders of this partnership. Thanks to Canada's contributions, Afghanistan today is profoundly different from the terrified and exhausted country it was 5 years ago. Today, Afghanistan has the most progressive constitution in our region, which enables the Afghan people to choose their leadership for the first time in their history through democratic elections. Over the past 5 years, our people have voted in 2 elections, one for the president and another for parliament. With the inauguration of parliament, 27% of our women found place as members of parliament. Actually, 28. All the 3 branches of the state have been established. More than 6 million children are going to school today. And to bring a comparison, during the time of the Taliban, only 700,000 children went to school. Only boys. Only boys. Today, over 6 million children go to school, over 35% of them girls, from little girls to adult girls. While 5 years ago, during the rule of the Taliban, people were running away from Afghanistan, we have seen in the past 5 years over 4.5 million of our refugees return to the country. From His Majesty, the former King of Afghanistan living in Italy, to the political leaders of the country, to the educated elite of Afghanistan in Europe and America and Canada, to the millions of refugees, poor ones living in the neighborhood of Afghanistan. They have all come back home. So Afghanistan, Mr. Prime Minister, honorable members of Parliament, because of your help, is once again the home of all Afghans. During this period, we have also disarmed thousands of illegal armed persons, collected thousands of weapons, light and heavy. We have begun to create our national army and our national police. We have achieved fiscal stability. Our economy has grown. When we began in 2001, our income per capita was only $180. Today, it is only $355, but twice more than only $180. In short, we in Afghanistan have embraced the vision of a prosperous and pluralistic society which Canada so richly embodies. Honourable members, a democratic nation is not built overnight, nor in one or two elections. A democratic state draws its strength not only from strong state institutions, but from the confidence of the people in those institutions and in the democratic process. Afghanistan's democracy will continue to grow, will continue to develop, will continue to gain the confidence of its people, but only with patience and with the continued support of Canada and other members of the international community. As we move forward, we will continue to look to Canadian institutions like this great Parliament and to Canada's pluralistic traditions to help to move forward. Despite our phenomenal progress, ladies and gentlemen, our new democracy faces serious challenges and threats as well. Insecurity in parts of our country as a result of the rise of terrorist activities is our greatest challenge. 5 years ago, Afghans and international forces defeated terrorists within 2 months because of the power of the international community and the will of the Afghan people, the desire of the Afghan people. While some terrorists were removed, most of them ran away and took refuge in our neighborhood beyond our borders. Unfortunately, it was in those sanctuaries beyond our borders where they were reorganized, trained, financed, and provided with ideological motivation to come into Afghanistan, kill our children, kill our teachers, kill the clergy, destroy mosques full of worshippers, destroy schools, destroy clinics, kill international aid workers, attack international security forces, and try to bring us defeat. A year ago, in southern parts of Afghanistan, all schools were open. Today, all over the country, as I speak to you, more than 150 schools are burned by these terrorists. And 200,000 children who went to school last year, boys and girls, can't go to school today because of these attacks. Terrorism sees its ultimate defeat in the prosperity of the Afghan people. That is why they attack us. Polio, which was almost eradicated and had only 4 cases last year, this year has registered 27 cases by the Minister of Health, and only in those areas of the country where terrorism has come back to strike health workers, children, and their parents. Terrorists are prepared to cross any boundaries and commit horrific acts of violence to try to derail Afghanistan from its path to success. They want the international community to fail. And I emphasize, they want the international community to fail in its collective endeavor to help Afghanistan rebuild. That is why they decapitate elderly women in the name of spying for the coalition forces. A woman of 75 years of age in Afghanistan rarely goes out of her house and is almost all the time busy with her grandchildren. You cannot imagine that a 75-year-old Afghan lady in a village would be in contact with either the international security forces or with the Afghan government or with any entity outside of the walls of her house. They would go and kill her and then label her a spy, just to frighten us all into the dark ages. And that is why, again, they are killing international soldiers and civilians who have come to help Afghanistan. Clearly, unless we confront them more decisively, terrorists will continue to attack us everywhere, in Afghanistan and in the rest of the world. We will not succeed in eliminating terrorism unless we seek and fight the sources of terrorism, wherever they might be, and dry its roots. Our strategy of fighting terrorism in Afghanistan has so far been mainly focused on addressing the symptoms of terrorism. That is, on killing terrorists who come from across our borders. This strategy is bound to fail unless we move beyond the military operations in Afghanistan and to address terrorism's political, ideological, and financial basis. We must also ensure that extremism is not used by any country or entity as an instrument of policy. Unless we go, honorable members, to the roots of terrorism, to where they are trained, where they are equipped, where they get inspiration, in other words, to the sources of terrorism, the world will not be a safer place for all of us, nor Afghanistan, nor any other country. Globally, that is true too. If terrorists continue to harm innocent people around the world, which is what we have seen happen from New York to Bali, to Madrid, to London, then it is our collective duty to stop them at the point of origin, at their breeding grounds, before they can reach far and wide. Fighting terrorism collectively, honorable members, effectively, is also tied to our fight against drugs. The menace of narcotics feeds terrorism and threatens the foundation of a legitimate economic development in Afghanistan. A combination of factors, mainly lack of a conducive environment, security environment for counter-narcotics efforts, absence of a comprehensive alternative livelihood program, and the clandestine credit flows to poppy farmers from outside are behind the narcotics trade in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is committed, honorable members, to fight narcotics alongside terrorism with strength and determination and through a combination of law enforcement and economic measures. We expect that the international community will continue to support us in this fight by enabling us to provide meaningful alternative livelihoods to our farmers. Honorable members, the narcotics problem in Afghanistan is as serious as terrorism. I know as an Afghan, and so do the members of my delegation, that if we do not destroy poppies in Afghanistan, poppies will destroy us. Therefore, trust us when we say we will fight them. And we will, because we want to have a country as good as yours and a parliament as good as yours. And we will not have that unless we have destroyed poppies. But it will take effort, endeavor, and many years of patience before we succeed. And I hope you will have the patience to bear with us for that long, perhaps 5 to 10 years. Honorable members, today, under a United Nations mandate and consistent with the wishes of the Afghan people, your sons and daughters are, together with the citizens of more than 35 other nations, committed to security for Afghanistan, while more than 60 nations, along with multilateral organizations, have pledged generously to help rebuild our war-torn country and to have a stable, prosperous, and democratic Afghanistan. Canada has made a tremendous difference in the lives of millions of Afghans already. Already. I've described only 5 or 6 aspects of improvement of life. I've told you of children going to school. I've told you of millions of refugees coming back. I've told you of parliament back. I've told you of women back in the parliament and workplace. There are hundreds of other examples, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, that your country is helping us on a daily basis to secure our country, to bring us a better life, better roads, better agricultural production, a thriving civil society, a press freedom that is unprecedented in Afghanistan. Today, in our country, where we had no television station 5 years ago, we have 6 television stations, private ones, all critical of me. All of them. All of them. More than 300 newspapers, almost all of them, again, critical of me. Over 30 radio stations belonging to the civil society. There is no part of the media that the government owns. And the ones that we own, people don't listen to. They don't watch. Exactly right here. Now extend that to the Afghan villages. The access that an Afghan in the countryside suddenly has to world news, to the rights that the Constitution has given to them, and to the awareness that that is the right that they have, that the government is nobody to give it to them, that it is theirs. This has come to us because your troops are serving in Afghanistan, because your taxpayer dollars are helping in Afghanistan, and that presence of your sons and daughters and your resources has enabled Afghanistan to offer this great virtue to our people. We are proud, honorable members, to be recipients of your assistance. It has gone a long way, as I mentioned earlier, in addressing the needs of our people, especially with the kind of generosity that you have offered that help. Mr. Prime Minister, you took Afghanistan as your first foreign journey, and we are grateful for that. And you have shown steadfast support for us and for the ideals that we share together through this Parliament and through the government. I'm also grateful, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, to the two former Prime Ministers, Prime Minister Chrétien and Prime Minister Martin, for they too committed to Afghanistan, for the Parliament of Canada, for having made that possible. Honorable members of Parliament, those of you who visited Afghanistan from the Senate and the House of Commons, and those of you who helped Afghanistan through your work in this Parliament should know that that help may seem little to you here, but it multiplies 1,000 times when it goes to Afghanistan. For you don't know, sitting in this Parliament, the desperation of the Afghan people, the need for security of the Afghan people, and also the danger that that lack of security can bring us here in Canada or in the United States. Therefore, your help to us for building us into the future is much more valuable than perhaps you can imagine. It takes us into the future, a secure future. Ladies and gentlemen, there is much that we can learn from Canada, from a society that speaks 2 languages, which is exactly what we do in Afghanistan. When I address the Afghan people, I do exactly as you did today, Mr. Prime Minister. I switch from one language to another, like that. We have learned from your experience the freedom to all the languages, the recognition of the minority languages. The national anthem of Afghanistan was a year ago in Farsi. Today, it is in Pashto, another language of ours, official language. But the national anthem of Afghanistan, through the modern constitution that we built for us, through your help, recognizes today all the 14 major ethnic groups of Afghanistan. And it is in our national anthem to mention all the 14 ethnic groups of Afghanistan. It's a beautiful song. It's not that long. It only takes a minute. So your presence there, once again, and your help there, has brought to Afghanistan the stability of a political system that is working towards a better tomorrow. And I thank you for that too. Honorable members, we admire in Afghanistan your respect and adherence to the rule of law. And that is what we are trying to do in our country. For justice, and that's what we are trying to do in our country. For human dignity, which was so stepped upon in Afghanistan by all those invaders. The dignity of the Afghan man and woman. And we are trying to do that with your help. Most importantly, we admire your determination to help Afghanistan. At times, with the dearest sacrifice that mankind can offer, the life of your soldiers. I sometimes think, what if Afghanistan soldiers were serving in Canada? What would the families of Afghanistan think when an Afghan soldier dies in Canada? Would they justify it? Would they see the value in it? Would they understand it? And when I think of the interconnectedness between humanity today, the dangers and the virtues together, I understand that yes, it is sad, but it is worth it. Afghanistan also sheds blood there. Every day, we lose the life of our children. We lose the life of our soldiers. We lose the life of our teachers. We lost one of our best governors, the most educated of ours, the other day to a suicide bomber. All of that is for a common cause, the cause of security for all of us. And it is this cause of security that you're serving in Afghanistan. But in Afghanistan, you're not only serving the cause of security for the international community and your country, you're also helping one of the most oppressed societies in the world and the little children that they have. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, Your Excellency, President Karzai, Monsieur le Premier Ministre,
Mr. Prime Minister, honourable senators, and members of the House of Commons, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of all parliamentarians and everyone here today, it is my honour, Your Excellency, to thank you for your visit and for your clear and eloquent speech to this joint session of Parliament.
your acknowledgement of the contribution of Canadian men and women to the development of a modern, free, and democratic Afghanistan is greatly appreciated. And I am confident, Mr. President, that our brave Canadian Forces personnel, together with the humanitarian workers presently deployed in your country, are pleased that you have had this opportunity to salute in the Parliament of Canada their important work. And we are proud of those Canadians who work alongside the Afghan people, together with participants from 37 countries in the NATO and the United Nations, to assist the women and men of Afghanistan in building all elements of your civil and national society. Aujourd'hui, votre
Today, your country is emerging from its dark era of terror and fear. You have adopted a constitution establishing a democratic Islamic government. You have held democratic elections, reopened the schools, and begun to breathe again after years of war and tyranny. Canada is proud to have been able to help you attain these objectives.
Canada is proud to have assisted the men and women of Afghanistan in accomplishing the goals achieved to date. Together, we have restored hope. Indeed, hope restored, spem reduxit, is the very motto of my province of New Brunswick. Hope restored might very well serve as the beacon as we continue to collaborate with the people of Afghanistan. Our NATO and United Nations colleagues are indeed fully aware that the process of rebuilding Afghanistan has only just begun. We know that the road ahead will be difficult, and we are all too aware of the costs involved. C'est pourquoi nous sommes.
That is why we are grateful to you, Your Excellency, for addressing the participants of this joint session of the Parliament of Canada. While Canada has a long history of establishing and maintaining peace all around the world, our mission in Afghanistan presents special challenges for the diplomats, police officers, soldiers, and development officers. We are pleased to hear you talk of their contributions and the work that remains to be done.
5 years since 9/11, it may be only a short time in the order of history. However, in that short space of time, Canada and Afghanistan have developed new and lasting ties. Canadians have become aware of Your Excellency's historic country as never before. And they hope that through their efforts and sacrifices, Afghanistan will become a safer place and the world along with it. We look forward with hope to the day when all peoples will live in the fullness of freedom. A day when we will be able to give priority to mutually celebrating the music, the art, the literature of each other's countries, or each other's cultures. So President Karzai, Your Excellency, your address to this joint session of the two houses of the Parliament of Canada has reassured us that our contributions are bearing fruit. Allow me, therefore, on behalf of all here present, to thank you once again for your address and to wish you and the people of Afghanistan God's speed.